All fresh data verified. Opening day is March 25, one day away. Full 40-minute pure voiceover script. Hook so powerful nobody can skip. Writing now. One day. That is all that separates the New York Yankees from the start of a season that could define the next decade of this franchise. One day before Aaron Judge walks into Oracle Park in San Francisco and steps into the batter's box for the first at-bat of the 2026 regular season. One day before Max Fried walks to the mound as the opening day starter for a rotation that, by late May, when Gerrit Cole is cleared to return from Tommy John surgery, will be one of the 2 or 3 best in the American League. One day. And on the morning before all of that begins, the New York Yankees are doing what they always do in the final hours of spring training, making the last cuts, moving the last pieces, resolving the last unresolved questions on a roster that, as of Saturday, March 22, 2026, looks significantly different from the one that lost the World Series to the Toronto Blue Jays in October 2025. There is a trade. There is a pitcher named Sean Paul Liñan, 21 years old, Colombian-born, built in the Dodger system, acquired from the Washington Nationals in exchange for a 25-year-old Venezuelan utility man named Jorbit Vivas, who had nowhere to go with this roster but Washington. There is a 4-man rotation announced by Aaron Boone that tells you everything about the choices a manager makes when his schedule gives him 13 days before he needs a 5th starter. There is a shortstop recovering in Tampa, doing high-intensity defensive workouts, hitting off a tee, clearing the diving requirement that was his final physical test, and working toward a minor league rehab assignment in the 2nd week of April that will eventually bring him back to the Bronx sometime between April and May. His name is Anthony Volpe. He is 24 years old. He attended the Yankees' 2009 World Series championship parade as a child, standing on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. He grew up wanting to play shortstop for the New York Yankees. He earned that job at 21 years old. He won a Gold Glove in his rookie season. He played through a partially torn labrum for 5 months last year, through 2 cortisone injections and 19 errors, and a batting average of .212, and a season that looked, from the outside, like a player who was not good enough to hold his position on one of the most scrutinized rosters in professional sports. And the surgery that fixed what the cortisone had only managed confirmed what the Yankees had suspected and what Volpe had known and carried quietly since the first week of May last year. It was not who he was, it was what he was playing through. And now, one day before the season starts, he is in Tampa, healthy, recovering, on a timetable that points toward April, and telling reporters that every day is better, even if it is a very small amount, whereas last year he had said, you do a bunch of treatment and you just do not respond, or you feel worse. He can feel the difference. So can the Yankees. This is the complete story of the 2 moves that define the final hours of New York spring training, the trade and the recovery, and why both of them matter for where this franchise is going. Start with the trade. Because the Jorbit Vivas to Washington for Sean Paul Liñan swap is the kind of transaction that most baseball fans scroll past on the transaction wire without stopping, the kind of move that does not make the main ESPN crawl or generate a press conference, or produce the kind of social media reaction that surrounds the blockbuster deals that define off-seasons. It is a name-for-name swap between a team that was about to lose a player for nothing and another team that needed that player more than the acquiring team did. That's it. That is the transaction at its most basic. And yet the specific details of both players involved, where they came from, what they represent, what the exchange says about how each organization values development, tell a richer story than the headline suggests.
Jorbit Vivas was born on December 19, 2001 in Maracaibo, Venezuela, the second largest city in Venezuela, the capital of the oil-rich Zulia state, a city of nearly 2 million people whose history and economy have been shaped more by petroleum than by any other single industry. He grew up in a country whose baseball culture is among the deepest and most productive in the world, a nation that has produced Tony Armas and Dave Concepcion and Ozzie Guillen and Johan Santana and Miguel Cabrera and dozens of other players whose careers span the entirety of the modern baseball era. Venezuelan baseball players have been finding their way to American professional baseball since the 1950s, and the pipeline from the country's amateur leagues to major league organizations has been one of the most reliable sources of talent in the sport for 70 years. Vivas signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers as an international amateur free agent, the standard entry point for Venezuelan teenagers who have demonstrated enough ability to attract the attention of the scouts who cover Latin American baseball. He spent years in the Dodgers system developing the contact skills and on-base approach that would eventually make him interesting to other organizations, without quite ever developing the power profile or the position-specific elite ability that would make him irreplaceable anywhere. The Yankees acquired him from the Dodgers in a minor league deal and brought him to their system as organizational depth with a specific profile. He's a contact hitter. His walk rate is excellent. His strikeout rate is low. At AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre last season, he hit .270 with a .389 on-base percentage, numbers that reflect a genuine ability to get on base at a high level against minor league pitching. But in 66 major league plate appearances last season, the sample the Yankees could evaluate directly, he hit .161 with a .266 on-base percentage and a .250 slugging percentage, numbers that say the contact skills are real, but the translation to major league velocity and major league pitch sequencing has not yet happened. Numbers that, combined with a roster that includes Amado Rosario, Jose Caballero, Ryan McMahon, Jazz Chisholm Jr., and an incoming Anthony Volpe, simply left no path for Vivas to get the playing time he needed to develop further in New York. Vivas was out of options and not going to the opening day roster. The Yankees now have a spot open on the 40-man roster. Out of options. That specific phrase, the designation that means a player can no longer be sent to the minor leagues without being exposed to the wire waiver, is the organizational death knell for a fringe roster player. When you're out of options and you're not good enough to hold a spot on the 26-man roster, the only remaining decisions are whether to DFA you outright or whether to trade you to a team that values you more than the team you're on. The Yankees chose to trade him, and in doing so, they extracted something rather than nothing. A young arm from the national system with an elite pitch, a price that every analytical observer who evaluated the deal called a reasonable one for what the Yankees were working with. Getting something for a player who was days away from a DFA is exactly the kind of organizational efficiency that Brian Cashman's front office has practiced for 28 years.
In return for Vivas' services, the Yankees pick up the right-handed Liñan. The 21-year-old Colombia native signed with the Dodgers as an amateur back in 2022 and was acquired by the Nationals as part of the Alex Call deal at last year's trade deadline. Liñan had an up-and-down season with the Dodgers and Nationals in the minors last year with a 3.03 ERA across 3 levels of the minors, but he finished well enough with 5 innings of one-run ball in the Arizona Fall League. Lakers Nation. 3.03 ERA across 3 levels, including time at AAA, for a 21-year-old who signed as an international amateur in 2022. That developmental trajectory, 3 levels in 1 year, finishing strong in the Arizona Fall League, is exactly what the Yankees look for in late prospect acquisitions. Not the finished product, the trajectory, the direction, the evidence that the development curve is pointing upward rather than plateauing. Liñan seems likely to begin the 2026 season at Double-A for the Yankees and has served mostly as a starter throughout his career, but the 27th-ranked prospect in the Nationals farm per MLB pipeline lacks a second standout offering to pair with his elite changeup and struggled with control in brief looks at both Triple-A and the Arizona Fall League. That could portend a move to relief in Liñan's future, which might be able to help him advance to the upper levels of the minors more quickly. Lakers Nation. The changeup. MLB Pipeline called it elite, a grade 70 pitch on the 20-80 scale used by scouts, the top tier of what any pitcher at any level of professional baseball possesses. A changeup that generates whiffs at a rate that suggests it will continue to be an out pitch at higher levels of competition. The question, the specific developmental question that the Yankees will be working to answer over the next 1 to 2 years, is whether Liñan can develop a second offering that pairs with the changeup to make him effective through a full lineup rotation. If the fastball improves in life, if not velocity, if the slider tightens and becomes a genuine two-seam weapon, if the command issues that surfaced in his brief Triple-A looks can be refined through the pitching infrastructure that the Yankees have built at Scranton and Double-A Somerset. If those things happen, if even 2 of the 3 happen, Liñan becomes a legitimate rotation option by 2027 or 2028. If they do not happen, the Yankees convert him to relief, put the changeup in a late-inning role where it plays up even further, and add another weapon to a bullpen that is already one of the most well-constructed in the American League. Either way, the Yankees turned a player who was going to cost them a 40-man roster spot they needed into a pitcher who at minimum has one elite offering and who at maximum has the developmental profile to contribute at the major league level within 2 years. That is organizational efficiency. That is what 28 years of front office experience produces. The 4-man rotation is the other significant announcement from the final days of spring training. Aaron Boone has confirmed the New York Yankees are using a 4-man rotation to begin the season. Following yesterday's game against the Philadelphia Phillies, the New York Yankees announced their rotation to start the season. Max Fried, Cam Schlittler, Will Warren, and Ryan Weathers. Clutch points. 4 pitchers, 4 starters. Opening day through the first 13 days of the season before the schedule creates a natural gap where a 5th starter will be needed. And the 4 pitchers who will carry that responsibility, who will define the early innings of the 2026 Yankee season before Gerrit Cole returns and before Luis Gil establishes himself in a consistent rotation role, tell the complete story of where this pitching staff is and where it is going. Max Fried is the anchor. The left-hander from Santa Monica, California, who was one of the most consistent starting pitchers in the National League across 8 seasons with the Atlanta Braves before signing with the Yankees as a free agent in December 2024. He is 32 years old. He went 12-7 with a 3.25 ERA for the Yankees in 2025, his first full season in the American League, adapting to the designated hitter lineup, learning the ballparks and the hitters of the most competitive division in baseball. He finished 4th in the American League Cy Young Award voting. He makes his stuff work through movement rather than velocity. His 4-seam fastball sits around 92 miles per hour, which would be unremarkable on its own, except that it generates 17 inches of induced vertical break, a movement characteristic that makes it play significantly above its raw velocity. The curveball is his best pitch, a 74-mile-per-hour bender with sharp downward break that hitters swing through at a rate among the highest in baseball. He is not Gerrit Cole. He is not the ace who can carry a staff through a playoff race on the strength of one overpowering pitch. He is something more durable, a pitcher whose command and movement and preparation make him effective against every lineup, in every ballpark, in every situation a baseball season creates. Opening day against the Giants in San Francisco. The choice could not be more appropriate. Fried against a National League team that he faced regularly for 8 years, in a ballpark where pitchers have always had an edge.
The first game of the 2026 Yankee season starts with the most consistent starting pitcher in their rotation. Cam Schlittler is the surprise of this rotation, the story that nobody who covered the Yankees in February expected to be telling in March. He came to spring training in 2025 as a non-roster invitee. He was a fourth-round pick in 2022 from Fordham University, a Division I program in the Bronx that is literally visible from the elevated train platform near Yankee Stadium, a geographic proximity that has made Schlittler's emergence feel almost theatrical in its New Yorkness. He went from non-roster invitee in February to playoff shutdown artist by September, posting a 3.2 ERA across 26 appearances, including 19 starts, striking out 147 batters in 151 innings. The stuff is genuine, a two-seam fastball that sits 94 to 96 with elite sink and run, the pitch that generates the weak ground contact that gets outs early in counts and keeps pitch counts manageable. A slider with two-plane break that generates whiffs at a rate comparable to the top sliders in the American League, and a changeup that, while not at Liñan's elite level, is good enough to keep left-handed hitters from sitting on the slider. He is 25 years old. He has never thrown in a full Major League regular season as an established rotation member, and he is the number 2 starter on the New York Yankees. That is the specific kind of development success that good organizational infrastructure produces. A player who was nobody's projection to succeed at this level, thriving because the coaching and the pitch design resources and the analytical framework around him unlocked something that was always there but had never been organized into this specific form. Will Warren and Ryan Weathers round out the four-man rotation for the opening stretch. Warren, a 25-year-old right-hander who was a Yankees 9th-round pick in 2021 out of the University of Tennessee, made his major league debut last season and showed the stuff and the command that had made him a legitimate prospect in the system for 4 years. Weathers, the 25-year-old left-hander whose father, David Weathers, pitched 12 seasons in the major leagues, brings the organizational familiarity and the specific pitching characteristics that Aaron Boone values when he needs a starter to eat innings and keep the team in games during the early season transition period. Neither of them is a long-term answer in a rotation that will feature Cole, Fried, and Schlittler at its core once Cole returns, but both of them are capable of doing the specific job the Yankees need done in the first 13 days of the season. Getting through 5 or 6 innings, limiting damage, giving the bullpen enough rest to be effective on a 4-man schedule.
And then there is the bullpen, which is, as of March 24, 2026, arguably the best assembled unit in the American League. David Bednar, acquired from Pittsburgh at last year's trade deadline, is the closer. He posted a 2.67 ERA with 63 strikeouts in 67 1/3 innings last season, demonstrating the ability to handle save situations against left-handed and right-handed lineups with equal effectiveness. The split changeup that made him one of the best relievers in the National League for 3 seasons in Pittsburgh plays even better in the American League, where the lack of familiarity with his delivery and his pitch mix gives him an additional advantage in high-leverage situations. Camilo Doval, acquired from San Francisco in the same deadline window, gives Aaron Boone a second elite late-inning option who can handle 8th-inning situations and spot close when Bednar needs rest. Clay Holmes is back. Jonathan Loaisaga's health determines whether he fits the high-leverage or lower-leverage role, and the depth behind those names, Blackburn, Weathers when not starting, Gil when not starting, gives Boone the kind of bullpen flexibility that contending teams require when the season extends into September and the margins between winning and losing are measured in single outs. Luis Gil is the subplot that has been running through the entire spring training narrative. After struggling and a major downtick in stuff, Luis Gil responds in a big way and possibly saves his spot on the New York Yankees opening day roster. The big lead,
Gil went 4-1 with a 3.32 ERA in 57 innings after returning from a lat strain in 2025, a stretch of performance that reminded the Yankees why they had considered him a rotation piece before the injury. He's 26 years old, he's a Dominican Republic native who signed with the Yankees in 2019 and developed through the system as one of the more intriguing arm talents in the farm. His fastball, when healthy, sits 96 to 98 miles per hour with plus rise, the kind of pure velocity that creates whiffs even when the pitch is left over the middle of the plate, because the ball arrives faster and higher than hitters process it. His 2025 injury and the subsequent velocity dip that concerned coaches entering spring were the first genuine tests of whether his arm talent was sustainable or fragile. And the spring training bounce back, the return of his stuff, the encouraging outings, has given the Yankees the specific confidence they needed to include him in their opening day plans, rather than optioning him to AAA while they wait to see if the velocity holds. Pitching coach Matt Blake said Sunday that Gil won't be in line for a starting role to begin the season, while the Yankees plan to get by with a four-man rotation for the first 13 days of their schedule. The Yankees won't need a fifth starter until April 11th, so Gil would appear to be tentatively in line to make his first start of the season that day against the Rays. The big lead, April 11th, that is the specific date, 20 days from now, when Luis Gil will walk to the mound at Yankee Stadium against the Tampa Bay Rays and begin the next chapter of a career that has alternated between brilliant performance and injury-related interruption since the moment he arrived in professional baseball. If his stuff holds, if the velocity that appeared in spring training games carries into regular season situations, if the lat does not recur. April 11th against the Rays is the next data point in the Luis Gil story. And then there is the story that sits above all of it, the story that is not yet happening, but that is coming, that is getting closer every day that Volpe spends on the field in Tampa, clearing the physical benchmarks that stand between him and the moment Brian Cashman has been pointing to since October 15th, 2025, when the arthroscope went into the left shoulder and confirmed that what the cortisone could only manage was now fully repaired. Before the injury in May 2025, he was hitting at around a 115 WRC plus clip. That version of Volpe is what the Yankees are waiting on, and right now the shoulder finally feels fixed rather than just managed. Sky Sports, fixed rather than managed. That phrase from the SI.com reporting on Volpe's spring progress is the most important phrase in the entire Yankee spring training story. Not fixed rather than broken, fixed rather than managed. The distinction between those two conditions is the difference between a player who was playing through pain that could be temporarily reduced but not eliminated, and a player who woke up in spring training and could feel actual progress, actual improvement, the shoulder responding to the work rather than just absorbing treatment and staying the same. Every day is better, even if it is a very small amount. Whereas last year, you do a bunch of treatment and you just do not respond or you feel worse. He said he was excited when they showed him how cleaned up and fixed everything was. He called that the motivating and positive thing to come out of it, even though right after surgery, he felt horrible. Knowing that it's fixed, then it's just a road to recovery. Yahoo Sports. A road to recovery, from a man who knows where the road ends, not in a rehab game in Scranton in the second week of April, not in the first live at-bats that will come after the diving clearance he's already earned, not even in the first game he walks back out to shortstop at Yankee Stadium and hears the crowd react to the return of one of their own. The road ends when he steps into the batter's box against major league pitching with a shoulder that doesn't hurt, doesn't require management, doesn't compromise the throw or the dive, or the ability to play the position the way it must be played to be the starting shortstop of the New York Yankees. That is where the road ends. And Jose Caballero, who posted an .828 OPS in 40 games last season and who has said clearly and calmly that he plans to hold the job and make the transition back as difficult as possible, is going to make the road interesting. because Caballero was not given this opportunity to hand it back gracefully when Volpe returns. He was given it because he's earned it. And the specific competition that will unfold between the opening of the season and the day Volpe is cleared for Major League action, the competition that the Yankees did not manufacture but that the injury created, is the most compelling storyline on a roster that already has Cole's return and the World Series window and the Jazz Chisholm extension question and George Lombard Jr. lurking in the wings. The Yankees open the 2026 season in San Francisco against the Giants tomorrow. Heavy sports. Tomorrow, Max Fried, Oracle Park, the first pitch of the season that Brian Cashman built on a foundation of restraint. The quiet off-season that critics called unimaginative, that Cashman called strategic, that will be judged not in March, but in October. The season that has Gerrit Cole throwing 97.5 miles per hour in Tampa, scheduled to rejoin the rotation in late May, carrying the specific weight of a $324 million contract and a 2023 Cy Young Award and an October 2024 World Series start that preceded the surgery that cost him a year. The season that has Aaron Judge at 34 years old, still playing like the best right fielder in the American League, and still the most feared hitter in the sport when he stands in for a pitch he recognizes in a count he's looking for. The season that has Antonio Volpe in Tampa, clearing the final hurdles, pointing toward April, telling reporters every day is better than the last. The season that a 21-year-old Colombian pitcher named Sean Paul Liñan in the Yankees system traded from Washington 2 days before the season started, carrying a grade 70 changeup to Double-A Somerset and a development curve that the Yankees' coaching infrastructure will work to optimize over the next 2 years. One move, one player coming back, one day before it all begins. The Yankees have built something here. Not the flashiest off-season roster in the American League, not the most talked-about front office. Cashman sat in his office in Tampa and watched TikTok videos and said the noise didn't bother him and that the roster was championship caliber. Tomorrow in San Francisco, they start proving it.